So, good morning, Cecile and Cecilia. Today we are going to do a reading response. For today's lesson, there is a few things that we will be covering. First, it's going to be a few questions that I want to ask you, and then we're going to move on to the reading response structure, and then we're going to the reading passage, where I will be going through the passage with you. I will then also give you a small, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just to ask me a few questions if you have any. And then we'll be starting with the activity. And then after the activity, I will also provide you time. So you can either ask me questions about your structure or your essay, or you can ask me or even provide me with the information that you have learned within this lesson. So my two questions that I have for you is, what is a Boston Terrier, right? I want you to use the background picture to kind of give you a hint on what it might be. And then my second question is, do you or did you ever have a dog? So before we move on to the structure of the essay, first let's identify what a reading response is. So if you listen to the title, it is basically where you are provided with a text and you have to respond on the content shared within the text, right? So this is where you say, no, I had a problem with this comment that the author made. I don't agree with this, and this is my reasons why. Or I found this comment very interesting, and this is because of my past experiences or anything. So this is basically just where you are sharing your thoughts on the reading and how the reading impacted you or your ideas. So now that we're done with the identification of the reading response, let's move on to its structure. So the reading response essay is the normal essay. It has the normal essay structure of, the introduction, the body, and conclusion. It's not something that is unique or different or something that you've never heard of. So yeah. So let's cover the introduction first. The introduction, it doesn't really have a lot of sentences. It's a short 2 or 3 or 4 sentences where you share the two main points or issues that you have found within the passage. And then the body is basically where you are sharing why you found that interesting, why you have an issue with it. So for this specific activity or for this specific essay, you're only going to have 2 paragraphs, right? The first paragraph is going to be your main point or your first point that you want to share or that you want to comment on. So let's say your first main point is, I don't agree with the author because I don't like the way he stated it, or I don't feel like this is the truth because of, X, Y, and Z. And then your second paragraph will be the second point that you might find interesting or that you have an issue with. And then you explain, why did I find this interesting? Or why did I have a problem with this? Or why do I disagree on this point? Right? And then we're going to move on to the conclusion. So the conclusion is also, it only consists of 1 paragraph, like 2 or 3 or 4 sentences. It's basically where you conclude all of your thoughts, right? So you're saying, I disagree with the author. I disagreed with the author on this point, and I found this point that the author made very interesting, right? Remember that in your conclusion, you never want to add new information, right? This is where you summarize everything that you have stated. You don't add more information at this point, okay? So To continue with the structure, I want you to look at your essay as a hamburger, right? So the first bun is the first thing you see. It's where your brain identifies, okay, this is a hamburger, right? So this is the same, this should be the same for your introduction. This is where you're stating, okay, this is, the main topics or the topics that this essay is about. And then moving on, you have your patty and your tomato and your lettuce and your cheese. And this is for your paragraph, right? This is where you add flavor and structure to your whole hamburger. So you sharing your ideas, you're sharing your content, you're explaining why you found this content interesting or why you are bothered by this content. So this is where you are basically putting all of the flavor within your essay. And then at the bottom is your conclusion, right? So that is the bottom one. It's basically where it's catching or keeping together all of that information that you have just shared, right? So it's basically just a summary of everything that you have put in this bun. Yeah. So as you know, it is quite common for each and every essay to have 3 stages. So you have your planning, your drafting, and your final draft. And this is how you create a magnificent essay, right? So planning is where you use your mind maps and your diagram. It's where you state all of your points that you want to share, all of your ideas that you want to link with those points. And so this is basically just for you to identify what information you are going to be sharing within your essay, right? So then we are moving on to your draft. So this is where you start writing out your essay. It's where you put down all of your ideas and points to see if your structure is correct, to see if you have any spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes or punctual mistakes. And this is where you change all of those mistakes that you have made. With this with this draft that you have fixed all of the mistakes, you move on to your final draft. So this is where you rewrite your whole essay, but with the fixed points or with the fixed grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes and with everything, right? So for the next part, we are starting with the activity, right? So I have provided you with a reading passage called The Boston Terrier, right? And we will be reading this passage together. And then afterwards, I'm going to leave you to read the passage by yourselves. So I'll provide you with 15 minutes to read the passage by yourself after I have read it with you. And then I will be moving on to our question or discussion session. So now that we have done the reading and that you have also read the passage by yourself, let's move to the discussion session. So with this small 5 to 10 minute session, I want you to think of anything that might have confused you, right? So this is where you are going to ask me questions. This is where you're going to ask me if there was certain words that you don't understand, if there's certain sentences that might have confused you. So this is where you are going to find clarity, right? So at any stage, if you're unsure about something, that I want you to ask me right now if there was any words or sentences or anything that might have confused you within the passage. Cool. Now that we have discussed all questions or matters that might have confused you, let us move on to the activity. So now you are going to take your reading, you're going to place it next to you, and you're going to start with your mind map, then move on to your draft, and then your final draft.